right, thank you all for coming today and attending our expo. I think you're going to get a lot of great information from our speakers. My name is Jay North. I'm one of the board members of the association. Raise your hand if you're a member of the association. And any of you who are not, you can sign up out at the main table or speak to any of us. We can hook you up. But feel free to ask any and all questions of anyone you see wearing one of the black sweaters with the logo, or me. I couldn't find one. So, I'd like to introduce Mark Burkholder. He's spoken at 9 NIADA events, 32 state association events on the subject of financial planning and dealership. What's the word?
Succession.
Succession, thank you. And Allison Harrison. She is our local counsel for NIADA or OIADA. And if you ever had a legal question for Wendy, that Allison's the one who answers it. So.
Wendy's pretty good. She might answer.
Yeah,
she can double check your stuff.
Yeah, unlike Allison, I need an introduction because no one knows who I am, right? Hopefully you don't know who Allison is, but she's the person who you need when you meet somebody. This is who you need. So we decided to do a little joint venture today because Allison's firm really works with estate planning. She helps dealers get through the process of taking it from today to tomorrow. We came up with a fun title. We thought, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan, you really do have a plan, you just don't know it. So sitting in here, just by show of hands, even if you don't want to, who has a written down last will and testament? Like it's documented, it's here. Okay, about 4 hands went up. Let me give you a little bit of advice before we start. Every single one of you have a last will and testament. It's just the state in which you live are going to dictate exactly where all of your assets go, and you have no say-so in it whatsoever.
And who takes care of your kids if you have kids under the age of 18?
So, what we're going to try to do today is make death and taxes somewhat humorous, which is impossible. And we're going to give you some information that you can walk away from. But she may be some of your attorneys, and I may be some of your financial planners, because in this room I do have some clients. But as compliance would tell you, we're not your, consult us directly if you need information. So what are we going to talk about today? What a retirement plan looks like for dealers. Most dealers don't go invest in the stock market because your stock market is Ford, Chevy, and Honda. You're not going to go take money and put it into something that you don't control, right? You don't want to go up and down. You'd rather go up and down on what you believe in, not what someone else believes in. What does an estate plan look like for you? These are just some points of interest we're going to come over. Estate plan may be a succession plan. It may be passing it down to a lineal descendant, son, daughter, niece, nephew. It may be dying at your desk. I don't know, that could be your plan. I have an 81-year-old client who's one of my best friends. His plan is to die at his desk. And he said, this is my plan. And that's fine, because we have everything written up that whenever he passes away, we know it's going to happen with all his businesses and everything else. But he wants to work and buy and sell cars until he drops dead. And he's hoping it's at his desk. So, you can have other unique considerations. Whenever we walk into a business, typically, I ask the dealer on succession planning, what do you want? It's not my plan, it's your plan. What do you want? I want to maintain control. I don't want to get to my vulnerable age, 70, 80, whenever, and I've passed down all my assets, and my kids are running this thing into the ground, and I don't have anything. So I don't want to remain vulnerable. I want to maintain control. Promote family harmony. I could spend 3 days talking about how difficult that is. Right? Little Johnny's in the dealership and he's building the business, and you've got 2 other kids outside of the business who aren't doing anything for you. Mom wants fair, right? Mom wants, everybody should get a third, and a third. Yeah, that doesn't work, just so you know. Dad typically wants, hey, he's earning it, he gets more. Mom's like, no, we want a third, a third, a third. Right? So when it comes to stuff like this, I would best tell you when you have a dealership and you want to do something with it, have conversations while you're alive and in your right mind. Hey, Johnny's going to get this amount, here's why. Allison can go into and why we do estate equalization, using other assets to equal out the estate. You can do stuff to leverage. Hey, you're not going to get the dealership, we're going to give you properties A, B, and C, cash, life insurance proceeds, whatever that may be. Protect assets from creditors and litigation. And I'm kind of cruising through this a little bit. Allison and I will be available all day to have some more questions. That's a big thing. You don't want, I live in Alabama, and we have an attorney on literally every corner is Alexander Shannara, right? And my illustration in Alabama is you don't want to call from Alexander Shannara. You don't want to lose your stuff to him because your creditor and litigation exposed. There are so many things, as he announced when I worked in here, I worked with about 1,000 independent dealers across the country, from California to Ohio to Florida, Texas. That's the biggest thing that dealers worry about. Hey, if X happens, am I litigation creditor exposed? Are there ways around that? You never know how you take this. It's not really a joke, but it's real life. O.J. Simpson was found innocent of a lot of crimes that he could have committed, right? But he still plays golf every day. He smokes cigars every day and has a pretty good life, even though he's declared bankruptcy 3 times and has been sued by everyone in the country. It's because his assets were creditor and litigation protected and no one can get to them, including the IRS. There are vehicles that you can use to do that. Minimize taxation, create a succession plan, diversify taxable retirement, avoid family disruption. And what I tell most people is, every car dealer operates in a microscope. You wake up and you buy as many as you can, you sell as many as you can, you look at as many as you can, and then you go to bed. And you do that every single day. But if you'll allow yourself to get into a telescope, the telescope's coming 15 years from now, 20 years from now. And if you don't plan for the telescope, you will react to the telescope. And a reaction is much more expensive than a plan. Right? If you plan to go on vacation, you spend a couple weeks planning to where you're going and doing stuff. It's more efficient, you can get some deals. If you get into a car wreck, it's more expensive because it's a reaction of something that has happened. It's the same thing with retirement. You got one shot at this. Anyone sitting out there, you don't really have a dress rehearsal. This is your one shot. The biggest thing outside of this room that someone bought is a house. That may be $250,000. That's their biggest transaction of their life. Your biggest transaction of your life may be millions of dollars. And as you're going through this path of what do we do to get to the telescope, you don't have a dress rehearsal. If you make a mistake, you're just kind of screwed. Rely on someone who does it, who's seen it a lot, in order to help you avoid the landmines that may be coming. Do you have a plan?
No, the graphics.
Right. Graphics didn't come. That's something else. 37% of all business owners would like to transfer it to a child, family member, management. OB business, right?
Of business owners, it should be of.
Yeah. 21% have it written down in written form. This is what I want to have happen. The bottom one says 79%. Let's transpose those. 21% of business owners have it in writing. 79% do not. Toe tag. Love that, right? Let that wash over. Okay.
I'm gonna back out and see if.
All right. There's what this slide says. I do this a lot. There's 100% certainty that you're leaving your business. I can promise you that. One way or another, you're leaving your business. I won't flip until she's got it up here.
It's because I don't have network connection, so.
Uh-oh.
I don't know why I disconnected.
So, one way or another, you're leaving. You're either, oh, we're locked on here. You're either going to sell it to an insider, you're going to sell it to an outsider, or you're going to die at your desk. One of those three things is going to happen. So, what's the most tax advantageous thing you can do? What's the best way you can get out of it? There are certain strategies you can use. Certain strategies you can use to eliminate ordinary income taxes. There are golden handcuffs. How do you operate golden handcuffs? How does a business get a deduction? How do you lock in an employee long term? Of staying there, giving them a bonus, and ultimately funding your retirement. What I tell people all the time, you do not want to be on the beach. But let me ask you this. Do you think your heir apparent, niece, nephew, general manager, whoever that may be, are they going to work as hard as you? No way. Sorry, ain't going to happen. I don't care how well you're raised. I got 4 boys and a girl, so I get it. They're not going to work as hard as you. Do you want to be on the beach in your retirement, worried about what's going on at the dealership? No. But ultimately, if you're relying on that person to give you a check, you're not retired. You're just in a more stressful thing going, did they show up to work on time? How many sales did they make? My God, am I still getting a check? That's what you're asking. Second generation has a 50% chance of failing. Third generation has an 80% chance of failing. It happens. It's just numbers. Eliminate, absolutely eliminate variables. Whenever we work on retirement plans for people, I'll sit there and go, what is your tax rate today? Most of them know. It's 32%, it's 40%, whatever it is. If you're deferring money till later, not a political commentary, I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. Do you think taxes are going up in the future? Okay. So everyone sitting here today, your constant is your tax rate. Are you going to take money and defer it to a variable that's likely going up in the future? No way. Don't do that. There are financial vehicles. There are things you can do selling your business today that locks in constants and eliminates variables. Be smart about how you do it. People think there's too often it's just the way it works. It's just the way it is. That's what I have to pay. No, it isn't. That's what a CPA is telling you. No offense to CPAs. CPAs typically look in the rearview mirror and they tell you this is how much you owe me. Financial planners, estate planners, look through the windshield and go, if you do A, B, and C, you won't owe that amount. There's different things you can do. That's why you work with people like Allison and I. Allison is a brilliant attorney. She thinks a lot of technology, maybe a little challenge.
No, it's the Wi-Fi. It's connected. It was fine then.
It's not her fault. Trust me when I say it's not her fault.
I'm trying to hotspot. My computer now just is confused by that Wi-Fi.
So, as you go through this, there are family dynamics. Why is this so difficult? Why do most people, even if they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, well, man, I'm not going to succession plan for a while. I don't need to plan for a while. Why do people not do it? Why do you choose just to go, I'm going to stick my head in the sand? You don't want to deal with the crap. You don't want to have those conversations. So what I encourage people to do, 99% of people don't want to have those conversations due to family conflict. They don't want to tell little Johnny that you're getting X% when you're not. And they don't want to deal with the fight and the animosity that's going to happen. So, like I said, I've done this before. they don't want to deal with it. The second thing is they have many advisors. They have a CPA, an attorney, a life insurance guy, an investment guy, maybe a floor plan guy, and they're all giving you siloed information. They're giving you information that's pertinent to their retirement, not your retirement.
I just picked which slide you're on.
I got
You're not on it.
That's no worries. This is where we're going. If you wanted to, many people in here, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, the estate tax is changing. You get a lifetime exemption, and we're going to use very round numbers right now. That is approximately 13 million today. That means if you're not married and you're worth $13 million, sorry, when you pass, that can go basically estate tax free. If you have portability and you're married to a spouse, you now get combined. You get 26 million. So you have all this net worth that you can just pass estate tax free. But what is coming in the future, and we'll get back to that. Here's what's coming. If you have a net worth today of, let's say, 25 million, and you have an exemption of 24, $1 million is due to federal state tax. That means 9 months after second passing, and all of you are young in this room, I get it, but this is what's coming in 2026. The government gets a check for $400,000. It's 40%, they get $400,000.
What's second passing mean 9 months after second passing?
Your spouse passes. Okay. What's coming 2025 and beyond? If you have that same 25 million, the exemption is being lowered to approximately 7 million.
It's adjusted for inflation, so this is our best.
Yeah, it's our best guess.
It used to be 5.5, but inflation got closer to 7 now.
Now, you have $11 million that's subject to estate tax. This is 1 year later. From today to 2025, your heirs have to write a check for $400,000, or they have to write a check for $4.4 million. That is coming. That is not, oh, up for debate, oh, it's going to change. That's coming. Now, the kicker on this is kind of, Allison and I were talking about it last night. Let's say your dealership's worth something, and you got a reinsurance program, and that's an asset, and you have some investments, and that's an asset, and your lot, and your house, and all that stuff. And you have a cumulative sum of 25 million, okay? And you went out and thought it was the right thing to do because you're an honorable person, and you went and bought a $5 million life insurance policy for your heirs. Something happens to me, I want to give them $5 million. Now, coming up, if that's in your name, if you own that, and your wife is the beneficiary of that, that gets tacked on top of your estate. It now becomes a taxable item. So your estate is no longer worth 25 million, it's worth 30 million. Now the numbers grow because you tried to do the right thing for your wife or your kids. There are things you can do to get that out of your estate. They're called ILETs and different types of trust, and that's why we involve Allison. She's the expert at drafting those things. But we remove stuff. What we're telling people today, and really this is based on the previous screen's evaluation of your business. If you're worth a lot of money, and you know this change is coming, our counsel for a lot of people is, if you trust your heirs, you can design plans over the next 18 to 24 months for gifting. Gifting out of your estate to your heirs. I'm working with a guy now in Florida, he's worth 50 million. And it goes back to the first slide. He goes, I don't want to be later in my days, and all of a sudden my kids are hurting me, and I need the money, and I've gifted all my stuff to them. So we're making him be a 1% A share with all the voting rights, and the kids get all the B shares, have 0 voting rights, and he can go over them at any time and still maintain some income and maintain some security for he and his wife. So, the one thing I will tell you, I'm about to turn this over to Allison. If you do nothing else today, Don't walk out of this room and go, man, they made a lot of good points. And then you go back to your microscope. All you've done is you've lost an hour of your life sitting here. Don't have good intentions. Good intentions get you nowhere. I sat with a widow last week that her husband had good intentions to do everything. And he passed away at the ripe old age of 65. And I had to sit down in my office with her and tell her nothing got signed, nothing got done. I'm very sorry. And we cried together. And when she left my office, she was as broke as when she came in. Because she didn't have any planning, because he was 65 and nothing was going to happen to a 65-year-old. Don't have good intentions. Create a plan, create some action, create tractions with your action, but ultimately do something. Walk out of here today, start a plan with Allison, start a plan with myself, have something in writing, do something to avoid probate. So that's kind of my very quick spin through everything. I'm going to leave it over to the person I trust the most, who I send clients to, and is definitely more knowledgeable than I, especially when it comes to this. If you're not working with Allison, you need to. She is one of the preeminent attorneys in Ohio, especially for estate planning. Your association trusts her, so I think you should as well.
Thank you, Mark. That's the nicest intro I think I've ever gotten. The one thing that I think Mark hit on a little bit is working on focusing silos. Sometimes you'll have a meeting with Mark, you'll have a meeting with your accountant, you'll have a meeting with your attorney, but they don't talk to each other. It is very nice from the attorney piece, and I think from Mark's piece, to have those conversations together or have the introduction. I have another financial planner who refers clients, and I'm like, can you send me a balance sheet? Because I need to know what this person's worth because their plan changes. And they're kind enough to do it, but not everyone does. They're just like, hey, can you help Joe? Cool. Is Joe worth $4 million? Is he worth 400? Is he worth 40 million? Where are we at? Because it drastically changes the plan. So I think to the extent that you can introduce all the folks who will help you continue on, that is super helpful.
If you're operating to that point with someone who's not communicating with your attorney or your accountant or your insurance guy or your investment guy, leave them. Seriously. You don't need to be bogged by all these people, but you need someone who's willing to communicate with all of those people, because it's not our plan, it's your plan. And if you don't have everyone on the same page, it doesn't work. Trust me.
The other bonus to this, having everyone together, is if something happens to you, and let's say your spouse or your kids are people left taking care of it, they need to make one phone call. Mark, Dad died, what do I do? Then Mark can get everyone in line to help figure out what are we doing, right? That's the other piece of it, because I will tell you when your parent passes away, you're an emotional train wreck and you have no idea where to look. But if you have one phone number, that's a hell of a lot easier. The unique consideration for car dealers. Your license may be for your company, but you are personally on it. If you die, there is no license holder. Your dealership cannot sell cars. That means your floor plan becomes due, but you can't sell cars to pay your floor plan. It becomes a cycle. Now Wendy and her team at OIABA, they're great. They just, in record time, got a dealer license open in 2.5 weeks. If your business is down for 2.5 weeks, think about the impact. You can't sell a car for 2.5 weeks, but you have floor plan interest. So looking and figuring out how do you work around this, who else can be on the license with you at some point, so that if something happens to you, there is a continuation of your business. That is a huge piece of succession planning in Ohio for car dealers. And if you take nothing else away, take that away. This is a question I get all the time in the estate planning world is, I want a will, I don't have to go through probate. A will literally tells the probate court what to do. That is, the probate court is there to do that. That is the whole purpose. And if you don't have a will, they come up with what's called descent and distribution of how your assets are supposed to go. So a will doesn't avoid probate. There are plenty of other ways that you can do it, through beneficiaries, through trusts, through insurance policies. But if you think I'm gonna have a will, I'll just write it down today and be done. So I don't, my kids, my wife don't have to go through probate, that doesn't work. Why do you wanna avoid probate? Does anyone have any clues? If you didn't read the screen, I wanna back it up. Yeah. Does anyone know why you wanna avoid probate?
Costs money.
How much money do you think it costs?
A ton.
Anyone else? All right, a fast probate, I did one, it was just a house. Just a house of a surviving spouse that was not in their name because it was purchased before they were married. It took us 8 months to get that house into the spouse's name. The spouse paid for the whole freaking house, paid the mortgage, by the way, but 8 months to transfer it into their name. Can you imagine leaving your family for 8 months with no cash? Right? That's why we want to avoid probate, at least with some of your assets. I think all of them, but if we can only get some of them to avoid probate, great. That allows your family and your business to continue operating. If you have an executor, that is a person you name in the will to, I call it herd cats, figure out where all your stuff is and then get it to the people. The executor, not the attorney, the executor can take 4% of the first 100,000, so there's $4 grand, 3% of the next 300, 2% of everything over that, and then 1% of all your real estate. If you are heavy in real estate, that's a hell of a lot of money to transfer a deed. That does not include the attorney. I will tell you, unless you have a very small estate, 30 grand, you're going to have to hire an attorney to probate it. Because the forms, the process, it's too confusing to try and do it yourself. And the courts don't want you to do it yourself, so they'll tell you to get an attorney. You're probably gonna pay your attorney that. So make it 8%, 6%, 4%, right? That's a lot of money. And let me tell you, the estate plan piece of it, if you do a plan, you're probably gonna pay $4 grand to get the plan done. That's the first 100,000 that you're paying the executor. The other thing that I think is unique to business owners is how many passwords y'all type in a day? 10, 20, 30? Someone needs access to those passwords. How else are they gonna figure out where your bank account is, what your floor plan interest is, how to buy card on ACV or wherever you're buying card, right? So you're gonna have to think about, how do they access that? Do you write it down and put it in a safe? Great, how do they get the safe code? There are ways you can do this. There's actually password programs that will save all your passwords, and you can name someone as basically the executor. Once you die, they submit a death certificate, and now they have access to your passwords, your digital footprint. They can get into your Facebook or your business because you're the only one on it.
Let me jump in real quick. Many of you don't know Russell Moore out of Texas. He's a client of mine, and he came to me and said, listen, I have the will, I have this. So we sat down and developed a 13-page document just for car dealers. It doesn't have my information on it. It's just literally for you. It has what's my passwords, what's this, what's my bank account, who's my floor plan, who's this. 13 pages of questions you want answered that you can leave. Allison and I's booth is side by side. If you come get me, I will email you a copy free of charge. Like I said, there's no sales stuff on it. It's just for you. Literally, it's a gift for you. Come get that. It'll take care of this.
Yeah. And it
was designed by a dealer.
I've got a blog post that literally will walk you through how you nominate a guardian or executor for your Facebook account, your Twitter, your Gmail, all of those things as well. There's step-by-step guides on how you can do it on an individual account basis so that when you're gone, someone has control over it. But like Mark said, it's nice to have a list, right? When you have a loss and then you have to deal with that, you have emotional trauma, and then you also have just like the chaos. So the best gift, we said be a hero to your family, make it easy on them, keep a list. That's the end of the presentation. But I assume you all have questions, which is where I think Mark and I flourish better than giving a canned presentation is answering questions.
So my question is, obviously, many of us are growing businesses, and I have an estate, I have a trust. How often should we be reviewing it, reevaluating it? Because last year my real estate might have been worth X number, and today it's worth way more X's, right? So I know that I'm not touching base with my attorney often at all, if ever. So it's like, that is really scaring the hell out of me, because I'm like thinking, well, what about all this add-on stuff? Like, we constantly bill.
So my kind of rule of thumb, and Mark, you can jump in too, is when you add or subtract, you should reevaluate. So if you're adding new real estate, if you're adding a new business, if you're adding a new family member, or you're subtracting any of that, that's when you should just have a phone call and say, hey, I did this thing, does that change my plan? Your attorney also should be calling you, so. But nevertheless, I won't poo-poo the profession. Just reach out, right, as you're adding, because it's an evolving thing, and
Second, we run into a lot of, guys who have properties, right? Either Section 8 properties, commercial properties, beach houses, stuff like that. Be very careful what you put inside of your LLC, that they're commingled in there. I have guys who have a house worth $50,000 in the same LLC worth a $1 million beach house. That's not smart. I have a lot of people who have properties that are owned in their own name. They just, hey, it's my property, I carried it. Also, litigation and creditor, your red flag, screaming. What I tend to do with the estate equalization part, you have properties here, right? In the triggering event of your death, we open up new LLCs. One goes to child A, one goes to child B, one goes to child C. There's no hassle. As soon as you pass, those now are flipped down into their own LLCs that the children control. We don't have to worry about fighting.
Ohio has series LLCs.
Series LLCs,
which is a new thing, and I think this year is when we changed the LLC Act, so you can have one LLC, one tax ID number, but within that, separate LLCs for holding real estate. So you have one parent company and then separate cells, and each cell can have different ownership as long as it meets some requirements overall. So that can also be.
Alabama got that last year.
Yeah, we just got that. So that can help you if you're heading into real estate.
So, and you gotta be cognizant of just what you're putting in the LLCs, the values of the LLCs. Some people are better with a parent LLC or a parent company and have things come off of it. Some people are not, but maybe too complex for you. The biggest thing that we look at is what's the hedge line of where litigation and creditors can get stopped. We try to put as many layers before you of not getting attacked and getting sued. That's the biggest thing.
The other thing I would say, whatever you're doing, whatever your business structure, make sure you have documentation. The number of times I have clients tell me, well, I own this LLC and I own this LLC. And I'm looking on the Secretary of State's website, and I'm like, I don't think you do. Right? Like, can you send me the paperwork? Do you have any bylaws? What does it look like? And I'll get sent bylaws. I'm like, you never signed them. Right? And so some of this is have your initial consultation, maybe just let's clean up what you have now and then build off of it. But if you're having companies and having businesses, make sure there's paper trail. Because the first thing is an attorney trying to collect. It's a disregard of entity. You treated it as your alter ego because you didn't do any of the formalities. I see that attempted a lot. And so we want to make sure that you have that paper trail to verify, no, this is separate. This isn't it.
Be sure. I work with a client right now. He left his $30 million dealership equally amongst his heirs of 16 people. Yes. Could you imagine 16 people trying to come to a cumulative decision on a dealership? Oh, man.
I think that is a joke.
Yeah, right. I looked at this document, I was like, really?
And
So,
one thing I didn't touch on that Mark touched on, which was equalization of estates. So there's what I talked about, the descent distributions to default. There are some inherent rights that you have, and courts will look also if you have the same generation. So if it's all of your kids or all of your nieces and nephews and they're treated differently, that's subject to a challenge. And so we have to be very clear on how we document it. If someone is getting this thing and they're in the same class of heir, why is the other person being treated differently? And do we think that's subject to attack? I have one family, not a car dealer, much simpler estate. They have 3 daughters, 2 are married, very well off, the third one is not. Everything's going to the third daughter. But we have to do a different type of plan to say everything's going to the third daughter. We've got cover letters that say the reason that we're doing it is because she's not married, she's not well off, we're worried about her, all of these things. And we may have them come back in a year and have them re-sign. So that, okay, your tax list was great, we'll go to the second one. And then we'll pull moms in and we'll say that, because they both say the same thing. So we know it's very clear. The other piece of that is, if you're doing that, have the conversation. It's so much easier to do while you're live. The hardest part about the probate and the other, like the death part, you're not there to tell people, what the hell were you thinking? Leaving your business to 16 kids, right? So documenting that, that's also part of it, is providing explanation.
And, you know, to end this on an up note,
Yeah.
right? I told you, death and taxes, how much fun can you make it? There are things you can do today to save money. There are things you can do today to get yourself out of the microscope into the telescope. If you are sitting here thinking, going, the government's gonna tax me more in the future, make a plan, do something, be creative, talk to someone. Because you don't have to deal with the constant. You do have to deal with the constant, you don't have to deal with the variable. There are things you can do. Be proactive in your planning. You're a business owner. At the end of the day, it falls on you. But you may think, man, I got 30 more years in the business and my kid's 17. He doesn't know how to get through math class, let alone take over my stuff. But if you start to make that plan today, the sooner you start, the more efficient it will be long-term for you. Forget everybody else. Focus on you and learn how to save some money and get some money back.
And while you're doing that, by the way, for your business, if you're preparing, hey, my kid's 17 and you want to take over, let me start writing down how I do things. Aside from the financial piece of it, if your kid doesn't want to do it, you know how to sell a asset. Hey, how we acquire all our vehicles is written down and documented. So if someone wants to buy me, they know what that process looks like. This is how we're doing our advertising funnel online. We've got it written down. You know how to plug and play for anyone, whether it's your child or not. It makes it sellable, because everything that's in your head, no one else has. So the more you can write it down.
Yes, sir.
Question on the license.
Yes.
You get back to license, if you're incorporated, you got, officers in there. Does that apply there?
Are they on the license?
That's what I wondered, if the corporation changed anything.
So it can, because on the corporation, I believe in Ohio, your license can be your president, treasurer, secretary, and VP. If they're on the license.
So make sure they're on the license.
Yeah, what we often see is just one person put on the license, we're like, we just need one to do it.
Can you just add people to a license that's you already have them?
You have to do either a change of officer or change of ownership. So in Ohio, it's either an officer or an owner has to be on there. You can't just ad hoc throw, hey, Billy's a good guy, and throw him on here. They have to have more of a inherent interest in the company. And so that's where some of the planning comes in. Who do I trust? Oftentimes we'll see a spouse. They're like, okay, I'm married to them, clearly I trust them. We'll say that they're a 10% owner, because it also doesn't change taxes, right?
So being an owner in a corporation doesn't put you on the license. I think that's kind of what he was saying.
It depends on how, I don't know if the
If the
license.
yeah, if the license 30 years ago, my husband was on it. In the meantime now, with the accountant, I'm a 20% owner and our son is a 20% owner in the business.
If you're over a 10% owner, you're supposed to be on the license, but I haven't looked at the license, so I can't tell you.
Okay, but we never changed anything from 30 years ago, so.
You might want to look into it. I might want to look into it. One, from a compliance standpoint of anyone over 10% is supposed to be on the license. It's supposed to be disclosed to the DEP.
Okay.
But also from the state clinic perspective, you would want to do that too.
Okay, the other question is, like, if he's in Alabama, how do you do planning for people in Ohio?
Zoom.
Okay,
Yes.
because I'm so used to sitting down with somebody face to face, it seems weird to be able to.
Here's my rule of thumb, just so everyone, if anyone's in the room. I have 16 guys who work for me. They're all in different states. Dan Pace is back here. He handles the Northeast. He flew here today from New Jersey. What my rule of thumb is 10 million and under. I look at every single case that comes through with all my guys. There's someone who will handle that for you. 20 to 30 million, it gets somewhere else. 40 to 50 million, it gets somewhere else. If you're around the 40 to 50 million, I get in a plane and fly and come see you and sit down and spend a week. So that's typically what happens. We have just over 1,000 clients, just independent dealer clients, all over the country. And so I spend, as my wife will tell you, a lot of time on the plane going to see clients and working through their scenarios with them. A lot of times I sit down with the husband, the wife, the kids, and I'm the mediator in the room. I have a degree in psychology, which I use every single day.
But the other piece of that is the state tax, piece of it is the federal and state tax. Ohio doesn't have a state tax. So there's not like the unique planning consideration from the financial investment that is specific to Ohio, it's the national level, so.
And I work with, like, I get Wendy, like, your Zoom call, if you were to work with me, you said, hey, I want to work with you, I need some information. I will have her on the call as well, Allison. So
Allison
on the call, yeah. She will be on the call, and I'll say, do you like your CPA? Some people like, no, I don't think he does a good job. I'll bring a CPA on the call. I have all the people on the Zoom call, and we are literally, I don't ever tell you what to do, that's not my job. My job is to educate you on what's going to happen. Here's your decision, here's the good and the bad. Okay, let's go down this road. Here's the decision, here's good and bad. Where do you want to go? And then I help you facilitate the best direction to get there. Through legal documentation, through the CPA. I'm the quarterback, essentially is what I do. I just kind of facilitate everyone's moving operation.
And this all can be done on this Zoom call.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, me and my camera on my computer are very instant friends. Yes. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So the person needs to start from the ground zero.
Yep.
Yeah, contact you first and first.
It doesn't matter.
You contact them first, they'll pull me in anyhow,
Yeah.
so.
Same way. So, yeah, if you start from zero, that's a blessing. That means you don't have a lot to unwind. So I encourage that. I really do. If you're starting off, the best place to start off, if you have nothing, start to progress forward. If you got convoluted stuff, we can peel back the layers of the onion and get you to where you, like the guy who was 16 years on this dealership. We got to start over. One caveat that came into my world that I had to adjust, just me personally. If you have a will, and you got divorced, and you're remarried, that will is still existing with your previous wife. Just so you know. You gotta get a new will. You gotta get something that circumvents the previous relationship. Get a beneficiary on your reinsurance companies. Most dealers I work with don't realize that Dealer Re and Buckeye and all these things, that's a tremendous asset. There is a beneficiary designation on those entities that will pass outside of probate. Be sure you have someone as a beneficiary designation. Not only do we do kind of retirement planning, but we look at all those little things that other people just don't know about. So be sure those split up. And your reinsurance program can only go so big. You get one on your kids. How does that look like? You know, how's it funded?
Is that a beneficiary outside of the officers of the reinsurance company?
You can make beneficiary of anybody in your reinsurance program.
And any of your real estate, if it's called in your personal name, you can be beneficiaries that way, you can do it on all your bank accounts too. So like, there's so many very low level ways to get things to transfer outside of probate. And they get a stepped up basis, like if you do a beneficiary on your stocks or on your real estate, the heirs can get it evaluated and then their capital gains basis is changed to current day value.
And if you're sitting here going, I'm gonna inherit stuff from my parents, have a conversation with your parents and we'll work with them, because you may be receiving stuff that needs a stepped-up basis, that, long-term farming or land and stuff like that needs to be evaluated to be sure you get those tax breaks that you can. So there's a lot of stuff that we do outside of what we just touched, making sure that you're protected.
Sometimes it's undoing preconceived notions. I don't know how many times people come to me and like, well, I'm just gonna get added to the real estate when mom dies. It just goes to me. Cool, you inherit mom's, $10,000 tax basis or $10,000 capital gains basis. Somewhere 300. Cool, great. And with that $290,000 capital gains tax basis, right? We can talk through some of those things as well to make sure between both of us that you're not gonna pay more taxes than you have to.
If you're gonna inherit property, wait till they die.
Yeah.
It's full step up basis.
I interviewed with the IRS one time, and they're like, why do you wanna work here? And I said, I don't like paying taxes, so I wanna know how to pay the least amount of taxes legally. I did not get that job.
Just saying.
But I got this job instead.
Apparently they're hiring.
See, there was your humor. The end was humor.
Scott?
Beneficiary, minor.
No.
No, not in the state.
Under 18, we cannot inherit things, but that's why we bring in trusts sometimes. I don't love trusts all the time if you're at a smaller tax level, but if you have beneficiaries under the age of 18, it's the best way to leave them stuff, and then you have to name a trustee to take care of the money until they're enough. If you don't do that and you inherit directly to them, the probate court has oversight, and there's owners reporting that has to happen to the probate court by someone over 18 for the kid.
And every state is different. If someone's in here not from Ohio, like Alabama's age of 19, there's different adulthood states, numbers in different states. So Alabama's obviously 18, different states are 19, some are 20. So just be sure the state you're in.
More importantly, at 18, who is here smart enough to have 10 grand? Right,
20
grand, like, so a lot of times when we're talking about minor kids, we're planning to 25 or 30, because that's when, depending on your kids, that's when they're an adult, that's when they can handle any sizable money assets.
Just as a thought, we'll close it in. Like we do, trust, you get a third of your assets, at this age, at age 30, and it's for wellness, education, daily maintenance, cars, that you would have bought them, not that they would buy themselves. Another distribution at 35, and then full distribution at age 40. So there's ways you can mediate that out. You're actually in control of that. You can give us the numbers, but that's what we do a lot, is just setting up those increments, so where they're from a block is fully developed. Any other questions?
We've reached our full time, so I don't want to slow anyone down from talking to other folks.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark and Allison. The next round of classes starts at 10:30. So thank you all for attending.